Well, first of all, I find it ironic that Nancy Mace is talking about telling the truth, yet she's the person who blamed the shooter in the Charlie Kirk murder as a transgender. I find that very ironic. She also called me a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a registered independent that is anti-Donald Trump. So I want to be very clear on that as well. Listen, now she mentioned Ilhan Omar. If that's true about Ilhan Omar and she made those statements, I totally disavow that, but I don't think anybody could name me 3 Democrats that are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death that are elected officials. Number 2, every Democrat out there is saying this is wrong for the most part, political violence, we should never celebrate it. And all the right is doing is blaming it on the radical left, including Donald Trump. Nancy Mace wants to say to bring people together. Donald Trump has divided us by blaming the radical left for what took place here.
But you would be blaming. Okay, but Brian, be honest. If it was the other way around, and the investigators said publicly, as they have, as has the governor of Utah, that all the evidence pointed to this person being radicalized by the far right, you would not hesitate to say this was a far-right assassination, and you would go on a massive rant about it. So there's a double standard there, right?
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. I don't do that, Piers. You could look at my social media. No, you're wrong. Here's what I do. I call out political violence on both sides. If you recall, Piers,
that wasn't my point. Hang on, I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if he was a radical right, if he'd been radicalized by the right, I don't think you would be saying people shouldn't be talking about the radicalization.
The reason why, Piers, I ever bring up the radical right is because the right never takes responsibility, literally, for anything.
But nor is the left.
Blamed Donald Trump.
Nor is the left.
Listen,
the left, having said this for years, now is doing exactly the same thing. I saw Jimmy Kimmel literally go on a rant saying this guy was a MAGA guy, the shooter. Complete lie.
Piers, I'm always consistent on this issue. It doesn't matter whether it comes from the right or the left. It's wrong. We need to call out political violence on both sides of the aisle.
But we should also be unafraid to.
Yeah,
but Brian, you're missing my point. We should also be unafraid to call out radicalization where we see it as a primary motivation for these assassinations.
So do you think this shooter was a radical leftist?
I think this person was, as the investigators are saying.
That he used.
I'll come to you in a moment, Lucas. As the investigators are saying, and as the governor is saying, the governor has hit a very, in my view, sensible tone throughout all this. As they've all been saying, all the evidence is pointing to a young man who was radicalized to the left.
Okay, so let me respond to that real quickly. So first of all, even if that is true, I totally disagree with what Megyn Kelly said. If you're somebody who wants to kill somebody because you disagree with their beliefs, then there's something wrong with you. You are crazy. So, Piers, even if that was true, now we know he comes from a conservative Mormon family.
Yeah.
I don't really care what his political affiliation is. I'm grateful that his father, and a transgender, by the way, who two people on this panel continue to attack, there's a transgender that we should be thanking.
The 2 people on this panel haven't even got a chance to say a word yet.
Because
shut up for 5 seconds.
All right, let me bring in the 2 women here. Let me bring in Gillian.
Who they are. We actually don't.
Yeah, Piers, so I agree with you. Couple quick points. First on Elon. I agree with Elon. He donated almost $500 million to Donald Trump's campaign. So I agree with Elon. If not for Elon Musk, Trump probably doesn't win. He was a huge part of the win. And to Clay Travis, the idea that somehow Elon Musk just woke up in the morning one day and said, I care so much about this government spending is a joke. He did this for himself, the same reason why Donald Trump ran for office. They're in it for themselves and their investors and to enrich themselves further. Going to what Roger Stone just said, and Clay, about the fact that Donald Trump can't be in these Epstein files. First of all, let's look at his history. He's a liable sexual abuser. He's had 25 women accuse him of rape or sexual assault, including his ex-wife in court documents. He bragged on the Howard Stern show about going into teenage girls' pageant locker rooms, watching them undress in a sexual manner. And we hear Roger and Clay today saying, oh, there's no way that he could be in those Epstein files. And Roger, you're wrong, okay? In the Maxwell trial, we learned that Trump was on the flight log, Epstein flight log, at least 6 times. And Jeffrey Epstein said at one time that Donald Trump was his best friend. Okay, and that Epstein had dirt on Trump.
Who are the co-conspirators in the Maxwell trial? Who are those co-conspirators that we haven't identified? She's charged with conspiracy. Who are the co-conspiraters? Ask the U.S. Attorney.
It'd be nice to have the Epstein files to know that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but also, but Brian, I would say, Brian, this. I thought that Clay made a very good point. The Democrats literally threw everything but the kitchen sink. And that was because they couldn't wrestle the sink off its bolts. Otherwise, they would have thrown that as well at Trump. And the point being, they had but here's the point: they had access to the Epstein files. If there was anything in there whatsoever that was even a tiny bit damaging to Trump, they'd have leaked it, wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they?
Well, I mean, you could make the same argument with Republicans going after Joe Biden, calling them the Biden crime family. For years, we've been hearing the Biden crime family. There have been all these investigations. We heard about Hillary Clinton and 8 investigations into Benghazi. Republicans seem to find nothing. So I think the right is doing that more than the left. Listen, my question is very simple, guys.
Piers,
why have the Epstein files not been released? Hold on a second, Clay. Hold on, Clay. Hang on give me 10 seconds here. Pam Bondi said that she was going to release the files. They said it was going to be released, and then these right-wing imbeciles with their binders in Washington, D.C. looked like clowns. So my question to Clay Travis and Roger Stone is, why have they not released the files then? It doesn't threaten national security. I'm telling you, Trump is all over those files.
Just
in total disbelief, disarray, how have we reached a point where these are the discussions that we're having and on a national stage here? Like, we have Democratic elected officials who are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, the best and most effective debater of our time.
All they do is lie.
Activist, really. I think debater is really downplaying.
That's not true.
Ultimately.
Here, she's lying.
Yes.
In what way?
What is the lie?
Name me one prominent.
there?
Name me what? Hey, Riley, name me one prominent Democrat that has celebrated the death. And I find it very interesting. You've made a living attacking transgenders. You've made millions of dollars across the country doing that.
I didn't ask for this.
If you truly care about, I didn't
ask for the
I'm sorry you lost
I'm
your
in.
friend. Okay, hold on a second. Yes, in this case, you have. You've made millions of dollars profiting, going across the country. You've made a lot of money and you've made a name for yourself. Nobody knows who you are as a college swimmer unless you're attacking transgenders. Now, if you care about children, then why have you not criticized Donald Trump? If you care about children and women, then why have you not gone after Donald Trump for not bringing out the Epstein files? If you care about children, why don't you talk about gun control? I'm happy that transgender is out of that volleyball tournament, okay? But there's more important things that we should be talking about, and you've profited off of attacking transgenders with your hatred towards transgender people. Nobody knows who you are as a college swimmer. People know who you are because you go around the country attacking transgenders, Riley. That's who you are.
Actually, what she's done, Brian, very heroically, in my opinion, is she's gone around the country defending women's rights to fairness, equality and safety. Something that I'm very surprised to hear that you, on the left, do not wholeheartedly endorse and agree with.
Pierce, let me respond to what you just said.
Sure.
If, in fact, Riley Gaines, by the way, Pierce, I've had this conversation on your show about transgenders.
Yeah.
I don't think transgender women should be competing with women on the playing field.
So you agree with her?
However, I do. But here's my problem with Riley.
What are you talking about?
She doesn't talk about the... let me explain. She doesn't talk about the non-release of the Epstein files and real victims of sexual abuse. She doesn't criticize Donald Trump. She doesn't talk about how flags weren't at half-mast after children are massacred in schools.
Do you talk about... Okay, let me ask you.
Transgender.
Let me ask you. Do you talk about...
It's so funny because
hang on. I'm talking.
You followed everything that I've ever said on any topic ever.
Hang on, Riley. So, Brian, your position is that unless you talk out publicly about every single issue that is important in the world, then it disqualifies you from talking about the issue that you not only care about most because it happened to you, but you are passionate about because it protects women's rights. Is that your position?
Pierce, here's my position. You don't have to talk about every single issue, but when the second leading cause of death in children is gun violence, you probably should bring that up. When we talk about MAGA Republicans who have talked about the Epstein files and horrible abuse, Maxwell was one of the largest sex traffickers in the world. And the Donald Trump administration have sent her to a club.
Why does Riley Gaines have to do all that? Why does Riley Gaines...
Because she says she cares...
No, Riley Gaines cares about...
Let me answer.
Riley Gaines cares because a very, very tall, muscular, powerful male called Leah Thomas said suddenly, who was a very moderate, unsuccessful male swimmer, suddenly said, I'm a woman, and then began destroying women in the women's pool. It was clearly grotesquely unfair, unequal, and actually dangerous. And we saw the same thing happen in a boxing ring in Paris in the Olympics.
Like to be able to
and for Riley to be condemned by you,
that'd be super cool.
For Riley to be condemned by you because she doesn't also talk about other issues is absurd. Anyway,
first of all, that's not even
you know what? Critical. We'll come back to this. I'm just going to hold the panel here for a moment. A brief timeout. I've been joined by Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Nancy, what